everybody's been getting their running in and going for walks, and maybe you've been running the stairs in your building, and that is great, but it's also going to produce a lot of tight hamstrings, lower back, hips, and quads. So in order to keep doing all of these great things that you guys have been doing, we need to do a little bit of stretching. So this could take you 2 minutes if you want to go on the short end, or maybe 4 or 5 minutes if you want to hold the poses for a little longer. So as I always say, the stretches I'm going to show you today start out 30 seconds. If you're not used to stretching at all, hold it anywhere up to 2 minutes as you build up your tolerance to it. So I have my beautiful assistant today. We're going to start in a low lunge position. Left leg's in front, right leg is behind. And Danny's going to drop his hips forward. So this is going to stretch his hips, his hip flexors. And when you do this, several things that are very important to look at. You want to make sure that your knee that's on the ground, in this instance his right knee, is behind the right hip. You don't want them stacked on top of each other because then you're not actually stretching your hip. And then we come to the leg that has the weight on. So right now, Danny's knee is in line with his toes. I don't prefer that for alignment. I like the knee in line with the ankle. So I would have him move his foot up a little bit more so that there's a nice good structure here supporting the leg. Knee just about in line with the ankle or even a little bit behind. You don't want it to come forward on the toes. And then from here, his knee is going to track towards his second toe. So his hip is open. He's dropping those hips forward. He can rest his hands on his thighs if he wants to, or reach up towards the sky. Last bit about this pose that I want to remind you of, you can keep your toes untucked or tucked, whatever is comfortable. And we want to bring our attention to our tailbone or your stomach and your ribs. It's 2 cues. It just depends what resonates with you. So I want him to tuck his tailbone a little bit or pull your ribs and belly in, whatever makes sense to you. This is going to increase the stretch not only in our hip and our hip flexor, but also in our stomach for our psoas muscle. Also causes us a lot of problems, tight lower back, tight hips. So we want to hit that as well. So again, he's going to hold this anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And then we're going to move on to the next pose, which is stretching our hamstrings. So he's going to straighten that left leg, and his toes are going to pull towards his face. And now you're going to notice a very important piece here. His right hip is going to be directly over his knee. You don't want to send your hip back towards your heel. You want to keep that 90-degree structure right there. So if you have to wiggle your front foot forward a little bit, that's totally fine. His leg is nice and straight directly out in front of him. He pulls his toes towards his face. This engages his quad and allows him to stretch his hamstring. That's what we want here. If he lets his toes go away from him, he won't feel the stretch on his hamstring anymore. So toes are pulling towards his face, and he hinges at his hips with a nice flat back. He can rest his hands on his shins, or he can rest his hands on the ground if they reach, or if you have a stack of books and you want to rest your hands on that, whatever works for you. But now he's stretching the back of his leg or the hamstring. Very important to hit that as well. Again, he's going to hold that for 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Notice how he has a nice proud chest and his neck and head stay in line with his spine. That's very important. It's what you want. You don't want to drop your head and neck down. Always remember where we're stretching our hamstring. So keep your structure on your spine and your neck there. And then for our third pose today, he's going to stretch his quad. So he's going to place his left foot flat on the ground. He's going to drop his hips forward and he's going to rest his left forearm on his thigh. He's going to kick his right heel towards his butt and reach around for his foot with his right hand. He's going to drop his hips forward here. So you want to keep simultaneously dropping your hips forward while you're pulling your heel towards your hip. And he controls the pressure here. If he wants more, he pulls his heel a little bit more in. If he wants to ease up a little bit, he takes some pressure off. Ideally, you're off of your kneecap here onto the top of your thigh. This one could prove difficult for people. So we have a variation of this. He's going to release that foot. If you can't get into this pose, he's going to come to lying flat on his belly. He's going to prop himself up with his left forearm like he's watching a movie or TV. He's going to bend his right leg, and he's going to take his right hand and reach around for his heel, stretching the quad. Exact same thing we were doing just a moment ago, only it's much easier for him to reach this time. When you do this one, you want to make sure your knees stay hips distance apart. You don't want your knee to start to come way out towards the side, because then you won't be stretching your quad anymore. So knees stay hips distance apart. And he gently pulls his heel towards his hip, and he's stretching his quad. So that's it, guys. We stretch the hips, the hamstrings, and the quads today. Again, this could take you just a couple minutes. You want to take a break from work or watching Netflix, whatever it is you've got going on, and hit these really quick. Important to do them, though, so that you can keep doing all of the other activities that you love. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you soon.